This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
Some things you wouldn't mind being stuck with, like a huge inheritance. But a phone that has to be plugged in just right so it charges is not one of those things. Switch to Verizon and we'll pay off your old phone up to $800 via prepaid MasterCard for a new one on us. Just trade in any phone from our top brands with select unlimited plans. $829.99 purchase with new smartphone line on select unlimited plans. Minimum $90 per month with auto pay plus taxes and fees for 36 months required. Less $830 trade-in/promo credit applied over 36 months. Trade-in terms apply. Payoff phone requires smartphone purchase and port-in with new smartphone line on select plan. Must provide most recent bill showing payoff amount of eligible phone. Additional terms apply.
Welcome back to Mama Mystery. I am your host, Kelly. And before we get started, Happy New Year. And thank you for joining me on what is the first episode of 2025. If you can't tell, I am a little bit sick, as is what seems like the rest of the world, because this freaking cold just seems to linger on forever and a day. So we're just going to, grin and bear it and struggle through it. I know I have a lot of moms who listen to this podcast, and so I'm sure a lot of you can relate with me right now, but all of my kids are at home on Christmas break, and it feels like they've been home for the last 3 years, and I need school to start back up. I need structure back in my day. I haven't had much help. Our babysitter has also been sick, and of course, Austin has to work as well. So, we're just doing our best. But thankfully, this all kind of fell on a 2-week period that most podcasters or even TV stations, they don't usually put out new episodes, which really actually kind of bothers me because I'm missing my usual trash TV shows. I don't know about you guys, but I love a good Bravo show, especially Real Housewives of Salt Lake City or Beverly Hills. If you watch that, please message me. I need someone to talk to about these shows. But of course, they have not been putting out new episodes because of the holidays. So anyway, I don't know what that rant was even meant for. Let's just move on. Today's story is about Kelsey Berreth, a 29-year-old pilot instructor and devoted mother who vanished without a trace on Thanksgiving Day 2018 in Woodland Park, Colorado. And what began as a missing persons case quickly unraveled into a chilling tale of betrayal, manipulation, and murder at the hands of someone that she was supposed to be able to trust the most. And this is her story. Kelsey Marie Berreth was born on September 15, 1989 in Moses Lake, Washington, to parents Cheryl Lee Ellen Berreth and Daryl Lynn Berreth. She grew up on her family's farm, where she developed a strong work ethic and a love for outdoors. From a young age, Kelsey was known for her determination, her intelligence, and her kind-hearted nature. Growing up in the rural landscape of Moses Lake, Kelsey was surrounded by the daily rhythms of farm life. The vast fields and open skies really ignited her fascination with aviation, especially. She would often watch crop dusting planes soar above the family farm, dreaming of one day taking to the skies herself. Her mother, Cheryl, recalled that Kelsey had dreams of one day becoming a crop duster. Kelsey's upbringing was marked by a blend of responsibility and adventure. She was known to be shy at first, but those who knew her described her as sharp, intelligent, and having a warm sense of humor. Her close childhood friend, Nicole Haywood, noted that behind Kelsey's quiet exterior was someone who was very sharp and intelligent. Her passion for aviation led her to pursue a career as a pilot, and after obtaining her pilot's license, Kelsey became a flight instructor at DOS Aviation in Pueblo, Colorado, where she was responsible for training U.S. Air Force pilots, which is so badass. Her colleagues admired her dedication, punctuality, and the positive energy that she brought to the workplace. She was described as a caring, honest, hardworking, and loving daughter and mother and friend. In 2016, Kelsey relocated to Colorado, embracing the opportunity to further her career and build a life in Woodland Park. She maintained close ties with her family, who remained in Washington, but her life in Colorado was really a testament to her independence. Kelsey never needed anyone. But when she met Patrick Frazee, she found a partner who shared many of the same interests, and the two just hit it off. They met in 2016 through an online dating platform, possibly, but not confirmed, farmersonly.com. And I don't know if you guys remember those commercials, but I vividly remember being a kid watching TV and the commercials for Farmers Only popping up. And it was always some like farmer trying to date, and he's like matched with some high maintenance city girl, and then some other girl in her Wranglers comes along and like sweeps him off his feet. It was so corny, but so funny. Now, Kelsey, who was a dedicated flight instructor at the time, was drawn to Patrick's rural lifestyle as a rancher and farrier in Colorado. And if you don't know, a farrier is someone who handles the hooves on a horse. And their shared appreciation for country living, simple life, and horses seemed to lay a pretty solid foundation for their relationship. Patrick Frazee was born on November 1st of 1988 in Colorado. He went to the University of Miami, where he eventually earned a master's degree. And after completing his studies, he returned to Colorado to manage a 35-acre ranch in Florissant, where he trained cattle dogs and then worked as a farrier. Now, despite their initial connection, friends and family observed troubling aspects in their relationship. Kelsey's close friend, Ashley Cogburn, described Patrick's behavior as borderline emotionally abusive at times, noting that he often made really demeaning marks that sometimes left Kelsey in tears. Patrick's previous relationships also hinted at a pattern of concerning behavior. One ex-girlfriend, Vanessa Curie, who dated Patrick back in 2010, described him as a monster and recounted experiences of emotional abuse during their time together. But as their relationship progressed, Kelsey and Patrick became engaged and welcomed a daughter in 2017. However, they maintained separate residences, so Kelsey lived in a townhouse in Woodland Park, while Patrick stayed on his ranch in Florissant. And though we don't really know why they didn't move in together, some speculate that Kelsey just kept her home in Woodland so that she could be closer to her work. And this arrangement, along with Patrick's reluctance to commit to a wedding date, did raise some concerns among Kelsey's family and friends. Now, when Kelsey gave birth to their baby girl, she was over the moon in love with that baby. But as we know, motherhood brings its fair share of challenges, including postpartum anxiety and depression for some people. But Kelsey was proactive about getting the help that she needed, and in 2018, she took a spiritual retreat to California, not rehab, as Patrick would later claim. This was actually a facility to help her kind of like reset herself and her mindset so that she could better cope with the stresses of motherhood and just life in general, and so that she could be the best mom she could be. She knew she needed help, and this was her way of seeking that help. But when Kelsey returned home, cracks in her relationship with Patrick really began to show. And friends noticed Patrick's emotionally abusive behavior, but Kelsey just was not ready to give up on her family quite yet. Patrick, however, had other plans. Patrick's behavior became increasingly bothersome. And then, of course, he reconnected with a former girlfriend, Krystal Lee Kenney. So let's talk about Krystal for a second. Krystal was born in 1988 also. She is a former nurse from Idaho. She grew up in a family that was deeply rooted in the rodeo community, earning recognition as a rodeo queen at one point during her youth. When she was in school, she also served as the high school body president, while she also played on the volleyball and basketball teams. After high school, Krystal pursued a career in nursing, and she worked at St. Luke's Health System in Gooding, Idaho. In her personal life, Krystal was married to Chad Lee for about 8 years, who she did have 2 children with, and the couple eventually divorced in the summer of 2018, but continued to reside together in Idaho. Now, Krystal's connection to Patrick Frazee actually dates back to 2006 when they were involved in an on-again, off-again relationship. Their relationship rekindled, though, in 2018, during which time Patrick was engaged to Kelsey. But Krystal would later say that Patrick manipulated her into believing that Kelsey was an unfit mother, fabricating stories of abuse against their baby girl. And now this brings us to Thanksgiving Day of 2018, which would be the last confirmed sighting of Kelsey Berreth. That morning, Kelsey made 2 phone calls to her mom, Cheryl, and they were just catching up, talking about making cinnamon rolls for her daughter and what their plans were for the day. Kelsey mentioned needing to grab groceries for Thanksgiving dinner, and she seemed completely normal. There were no signs of distress. They had normal conversation. There was no alarm bells. Later that day, surveillance footage showed Kelsey at Safeway with her daughter at 12:27 p.m., picking up a few items. And tragically, this would be the last public sighting of her alive. However, over the next 3 days, Kelsey's phone was still active, and it appeared to send out a few calls and text messages. Now, one of those calls was on the 25th to her boss, saying that she wouldn't be able to make it to work that week because she needed to go see her sick grandma. Another text was sent to Cheryl after Cheryl tried to call her, and then Kelsey missed the call. But a text from Kelsey said, "I'll call you back tomorrow." And then that call just never came. So after Cheryl didn't hear back from Kelsey, she asked Kelsey's brother if he'd heard from Kelsey in the last few days, and he also said no. So Cheryl called Patrick to see if maybe he had any answers. Now, Patrick claimed on this phone call that Kelsey had broken up with him, saying that she needed to get away and just get some space. But remember, Kelsey and Cheryl talked on Thanksgiving. So don't you think Kelsey would have probably said something to clue Cheryl in that this was how she was feeling? Cheryl did not accept this for an answer, so she called the police department in Woodland Park, where Kelsey was living at the time, to request a well check because she hadn't heard from Kelsey since Thanksgiving. So that afternoon, an officer went to Kelsey's townhouse, and they weren't able to locate her, so the officer then called Patrick around 1:50 p.m. to ask if he had any knowledge of where she might be. Patrick told the officer the same thing that he told Cheryl, that the two of them had broken up on Thanksgiving and that Kelsey dropped off their daughter and then just said she needed some space and she was going to go away for a while. So he also told the officer that this whole exchange took place in an alley behind her townhouse, not in her actual house. He made a point to say he was not in her house. And he also made sure to tell the officer that when he handed over some of Kelsey's belongings, one of those items was a handgun. Now, oddly enough, though, Kelsey's car was still at her house, but her keys were missing, and it didn't look like she had packed anything to take off, and it also didn't look like there was really any struggle at her house. So where was Kelsey? Now, at this point, Kelsey had not been heard from in a week, and her family and the police decided to go ahead and declare her as a missing person. After that, things really started to escalate. On December 3rd, investigators examined Kelsey's phone data and found that her phone last pinged on November 25th around 5 p.m. at a location 800 miles away in Gooding, Idaho, which really made no sense to her friends or family because Kelsey had no reason to be in Idaho. She didn't know anyone there, so authorities reached out to the police in Gooding to see if they could help, but unfortunately, after that ping in Gooding, her phone just went silent, so it was either turned off or destroyed. The next day, on December 4th, investigators found Patrick eating at a restaurant with his brother, and they approached him to ask for his phone. They didn't have a search warrant yet, even though they were actively trying to get it, but I guess Patrick's brother kind of encouraged him that if he had nothing to hide, just hand your phone over. So he did. And meanwhile, authorities were at Kelsey's house with cadaver dogs to inspect her home, and one of the dogs ended up hitting on the back bumper of Kelsey's car. Also, inside the house, Kelsey's mom noticed a few things that seemed out of place. Things just weren't in the usual spot that Kelsey would have left them. And in the bathroom, she noticed that her bath mat was just completely missing. Then Kelsey's brother Clint, who was there with Cheryl, went into the bathroom and noticed that there were some spots of blood on the underside of the toilet bowl in Kelsey's bathroom. They immediately alerted authorities, so when the officers came back with luminol and sprayed it in the bathroom, it unfortunately lit up. The luminol illuminated on the bathtub, the towel rack, the door, even on the ceiling. DNA would later confirm that the blood was in fact Kelsey's, but they also picked up on two other profiles, one of a man and one of an unknown female. And just like that, this was no longer a missing person case. It became a homicide investigation. When detectives scoured through Patrick's phone, they found correspondence between Kelsey and Patrick leading up to the day that Kelsey was last seen, with the last message Kelsey sending to Patrick being, "Do you even love me?" To which Patrick responded, quote, "Why would I bend over backwards and stand behind you through everything if I didn't? So to answer your question, yes, I do." End quote. So romantic, so reassuring. But what they also found in his correspondence was multiple calls and texts to a phone number with an area code belonging to Gooding, Idaho, the place where Kelsey's cell phone last pinged. Investigators then got a search warrant for Patrick's ranch, and although they didn't find Kelsey or any evidence that could lead to where she was, they did find some things that just kind of raised a red flag in their mind. One, for example, was a handwritten list of people who were allowed to take care of their daughter in the event that something happened to Patrick. And noticeably absent from that list was Kelsey's name, the child's mother. Like, obviously that's a red flag, but not really a smoking gun. Now, simultaneously, police reached out to the number from Gooding, Idaho, and reached none other than Krystal Lee Kenney. When asked about her relationship with Patrick Frazee, she told investigators that she was just Patrick's business partner and that they co-owned a few horses together. They asked her more questions that they already knew the answer to, just to kind of see how forthcoming she would be. And at first, she acted like she hardly knew Patrick. They hardly ever even talk or see each other. So when they pressed further, she then offered up this bogus story about how she did see him around Thanksgiving and that she drove to Colorado through the night on the 24th into the morning of the 25th because they had planned on looking at a horse together that they were going to split the cost of. But then apparently Patrick didn't have enough money, so she ended up turning around and going home. You guys, Gooding, Idaho is 800 miles away from Florissant, Colorado. Don't you think you would have planned a little better if that were the case? That maybe you'd figure out if you had the money before you drove 800 miles? And what makes her story even weirder is that she didn't even use her own car for the trip. She borrowed a friend's. So yeah, cops weren't buying it either. They then contacted Krystal's ex-husband, Chad, and Chad lets them know that there were a lot of details that Krystal was conveniently leaving out, like the fact that she and Patrick had known each other since 2006 and that they had actually dated for a while. Oh, and that Krystal also conveniently left out that she and Patrick had been having an affair while she was married to Chad and while Patrick was seeing Kelsey, and that Patrick actually got Krystal pregnant, but Krystal got an abortion. Chad also told police that when he asked Krystal where she was on the night of the 24th, Krystal told him that she was just with some friends in Gooding, not in Colorado, checking out a horse. She also conveniently left out that she had to get a new phone after she lost hers, and that she also happened to lose her phone on the same day that Patrick's phone was seized by police. And Chad let them know that it wasn't until the FBI started poking around that he actually learned the truth about where she was that night, or that she lost her phone. Now, when police flew out to actually interview Krystal in person and collect her DNA, she told them she would not be speaking to them without a lawyer. However, she did have to give up her DNA because they had a search warrant for that. But they also contacted the friend who allowed Krystal to borrow her car, and while they were up there, that friend allowed them to search the car. This friend also let them know that she had a handgun in the car and that when they inspected the gun, they found that one single bullet was missing. Then, as they were interviewing some people who knew Krystal, they came upon one of her close friends named Michelle. Now, according to Michelle, way back on October 22nd, a month prior to Kelsey ever going missing, Krystal called her just hysterical and told her that Patrick had asked her to kill his baby mama because Kelsey was abusing their baby daughter and that she just didn't know what to do. She needed to confide in a friend about this information. But now that Kelsey was actually missing, this information was more than alarming. Meanwhile, Kelsey's friends and family and her parents and her brother, they're all holding these press conferences urging the public to help assist in the search for her. And noticeably absent from the search or any press conferences is Patrick. Then on December 20th, Krystal called the authorities and told them that she was ready to cooperate and tell them what she knew. With a lawyer by her side, she told them that there would be no use in looking for Kelsey alive because she knew she was dead. She told them that Patrick had killed Kelsey and that she helped him clean up the crime scene and that she was there when Patrick burned Kelsey's remains. She told them that this was something Patrick had been planning for months and that there was actually 3 other attempts to murder Kelsey, but that Krystal was supposed to carry out those plans and just chickened out. The first plan was to kill her by poisoning her coffee with the medications Valium and Ambien, 2 medications that Krystal had easy access to as a nurse. But what's baffling about this attempt is that Krystal was going to deliver this drug-laced coffee to Kelsey herself. She was literally going to show up at her front door with a coffee in her hand and just expect an otherwise total stranger to just take this cup of coffee and drink it. That makes no sense. But the insane thing is that Krystal actually admitted that she literally brought a cup of coffee to Kelsey's front door, told her that she was new in the neighborhood, and then delivered some bullshit story about how she had heard Kelsey helped her get her dogs into her backyard after they'd escaped. I mean, obviously this was not a well thought out story because Kelsey was like, yeah, that wasn't me. But then apparently she took the coffee anyway and then just closed the door. Now, it's unclear if Kelsey ever actually drank the coffee. I'm assuming that she didn't, but it didn't really matter because Krystal told police that she didn't actually spike the coffee that day. She just wanted to see Kelsey face to face to see if she got any vibes from Kelsey that she was really this monster that Patrick painted her out to be. Now, the second attempt was when Patrick told Krystal that he would leave a metal pipe outside at his ranch for Krystal to pick up, and that she was just instructed to show up at Kelsey's and just beat her to death with this pipe. Krystal said she actually drove from Gooding all the way to Colorado, picked up the pipe, and even drove to Kelsey's before finally bailing on the plan. So then Patrick tried to coerce her again by telling her to just use a baseball bat. But I'm sorry, why is Patrick acting like some puppet master? If he wants this done, why is he having Krystal do it? It just goes to show that he is such a coward and just a pathetic excuse of a human being. But equally as pathetic is Krystal, who goes to his house and picks up the bat, but says that she couldn't do it. So finally, Patrick takes matters into his own hands, and Krystal told investigators that on Thanksgiving Day, Patrick told Kelsey he wanted to play a little game with her that involved blindfolding her and then getting her to guess the scent of these new candles that he bought. So she allowed him to blindfold her, and that when he did, with their baby daughter in the next room, he beat her to death with a baseball bat in her own bathroom. He then put her body in a black plastic container and then put her in the back of his car. Then, with her body in the back of his car, he went to his family's house to celebrate Thanksgiving with his family. And to think that that poor baby was driven in that same car, completely unaware of what was going on or what was in the black container in the back of his car, is just so disturbing. It's eerily reminiscent of Chris Watts driving to the oil fields with Shanann's body in the floorboard and their two girls just strapped into their car seats right above her. It is just sick. Now, Krystal said that Patrick then called her on the 22nd, right after he did it, to tell her to come down to Colorado and help clean up the mess that he made. But she wasn't able to come down until 2 days later on the 24th. She said that she brought with her a hospital gown, bleach, latex gloves, trash bags, and shoe covers, knowing that she was coming to help clean up a crime scene. She told investigators that when she arrived, she was horrified to see the bloody bathroom, and even more horrified when Patrick told her to look out for a tooth that Kelsey seemed to be missing. After cleaning up the scene, which took about 4 hours, Patrick and Krystal drove Kelsey's remains to a secluded area on his ranch and burned them, along with any of the evidence that they had from the crime scene cleanup. And as the fire burned, Patrick told her that Kelsey's last words were, "Please stop, please stop." During her interview with police, Krystal told them that she was just sick over this whole thing and that she purposefully left blood at the crime scene under that toilet so that they would find it and, solve the crime. Oh, thanks for that, Krystal. Your good deed does not go unnoticed. However, that moral compass would have been a lot more useful the first 3 times he tried to kill her, you dumb. I'm going to just pause and move on. Patrick Frazee was arrested on December 21st of 2018, and he was charged with Kelsey's murder. He was also charged with solicitation of murder, and 10 days after that, he was formally charged with 5 felonies, including 2 counts of murder in the first degree, as well as 3 counts of solicitation to commit murder, and he was being held without bail. His trial began the following year on November 1st of 2019, and even though prosecutors did not have Kelsey's remains, they felt confident to move forward with their case, especially with Krystal's testimony. The trial lasted less than 3 weeks, and on November 18th, after just 3.5 hours of deliberation, The jury found Patrick Frazee guilty on all counts, and he was sentenced to life in prison without parole plus 156 years. So he will rot and die in prison, as he should. And as for Krystal, this part's a little more infuriating. She was offered a plea deal for her testimony that allowed her to plead guilty to only tampering with evidence. That's the only charge. She was originally sentenced to 3 years in prison for that charge, but later a judge reduced her sentence to only 18 months in prison, and she was released in 2021. So she's just out and about now, and it really baffles me that a mother of 2 young children could participate in the brutal murder of another mother of a young child and still be allowed to just roam free and be a mother to her 2 children. I mean, it feels gut-wrenchingly unfair. So, if you see her out, I'm sure she's not practicing nursing anymore, but if you see her out and about, or if she happens to be listening to this episode, which I doubt she is, but if she is, I hope you have the rest of your life that you deserve. As for Patrick and Kelsey's daughter, she is being raised by Kelsey's parents, thankfully. And I'm sure they are dedicated to keeping Kelsey's memory alive through their daughter so that she always knows how amazing and impressive and powerful and strong and independent this girl's mom was. And I guess if there's anything we can learn from this story, it is please, if somebody entices you to commit a crime like that, or, tells you that their significant other told them that they were going to commit a crime like that, you need to go tell somebody. Why are we keeping this information to ourselves? There's so many people that played a part in this story that could have helped save Kelsey's life. But because of people's inaction, Kelsey is no longer with us. And a daughter is now left without either of her parents. So thank you so much for listening to Kelsey's story. And if you liked this episode, please share it, leave a review, comment, do all the things. I appreciate you listening so we can get stories like this out there and hopefully honor the victims of horrible stories like this and call out the monsters who perpetrate these crimes. Until next week, Mama Mystery out.